Hi, so just a quick background on me. I'm an investor at Mercury. Our focus is UK pre-seed and seed investments. So just kick off, it'd be great to hear just a bit more about your team, how you met, and also what kind of led you to build AdClear.
Yeah, sure. It's lovely to meet you as well. Sure. So I'm Donny. I'm CEO, co-founder of AdClear, and so I can go into my background a little bit and then how we've kind of met in general. But my background originally started off in the restaurant space. That's what really kicked off kind of that entrepreneurial drive. It was an interesting journey, more so because my parents were refugees, didn't really speak English, so basically it was a lot of that kind of hustle and bustle of grit from my own side. Um, Went to university, worked obviously in different places, but really what sparked this was I was at Euronext, so I was leading sales growth, their B2B SaaS products into different sort of jurisdictions, and I kind of ran into this issue myself with marketing compliance, especially within financial services. And that kind of links naturally in because my co-founders, namely to begin with Joe's COO. So Joe's actually a former founder before he scaled a student recruitment platform, and then exited that and then went to work in VC. And me and Joe have known each other for, yeah, I think probably about 10 plus years. I would say a long time. Joe would probably say too long. And sort of we'd been tinkering with ideas for a while, wanting to start something. And I just get a phone call from him on a random, I think it was like a Tuesday evening, and he's like, I think I've got the idea. Mentioned sort of marketing compliance. He had a family member who worked at the regulator, so he was understanding the problem, had heard it from a few of the startups in the portfolio, and it hit that straight away because I had experienced the problem myself. So from that moment, we kind of knew this is something that we want to do. And then Joe had known since university for quite a few years. Um, Joe's words were he's the most sort of technically able person he knows. Cam has a really interesting background as well because he's kind of seen the whole journey from startup stage to IPO. So he was the fourth engineer hire at Arkit, and then he stayed with them all the way to IPO. So he's kind of led that kind of growth. He's been a part of that, and has seen that full cycle. Um, so that's kind of a general overview of kind of our backgrounds and how we've kind of known each other as a team and the birth of the idea.
And so I've taken a little bit of a look at your deck, kind of, but at a high level, can you just dive into a little bit more on what exactly is the problem that you're solving and how the content compliance process typically works currently?
Yeah, of course. So essentially, the problem is that marketing compliance right now is a completely manual process and it takes a long time. And obviously, when we're speaking about marketing, especially in this day and age, speed is of the essence. And this is a process that can take weeks from sort of initial stage to final approval. What that means is that one of our clients, for example, it takes them on average 2 to 3 working days to get back one content review. Now, one campaign usually takes 4 to 5 content reviews, so it can take up to 3 weeks for one piece of sort of marketing to go through. So it's a sort of time intensive process that compliance specialists, especially at regulated sectors, don't really want to do because they have a million other problems that they're having to solve at the same time. The big issue on top of that is that if it takes long and it's manual, it's one problem, but it also doesn't work well. So they're always having issues with the FCA, not just them directly, but it's a general issue. And the issue is that when they do come in, you're probably blocked for at least 3 months to 6 months while they come in, view everything, and you can't do any marketing. Another client of ours have people who spend 2 to 3 working days a week just on this because there's that fear element now. And on top of that, the issue is only getting worse. So these regulators, whether it's ASA, FCA, Google, the platforms, and in the US, sort of SEC, FINRA, etc., they're now deploying AI methods to actually track ads. So the issue is getting worse. So if you look at the FCA itself, they've seen a 1,400% increase year on year since 2021 of ads being taken down. So there's a kind of general process of there's a risk element which is growing. The current structure isn't working well, and it also takes a long time. So that's kind of really the issue we're trying to get to. We're trying to make it safer for you and faster for you.
And it'd be great to understand a bit more about how kind of scalable this is. And what I mean by that is obviously you're starting kind of within finance, but how easily could this apply to different industries? And how kind of are you picking up the regulation that's one changing as it's becoming more fluid, but also, you know, if a company is advertising into multiple geographies, how are you picking up different regulation?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of kind of that scalability, the number one side obviously is the jurisdiction side. So if let's say we're focusing right now on just financial services, which is obviously a huge market, you've got the sort of different jurisdictions. Now that side is quite scalable because a lot of jurisdictions is a similar line of thinking. So it's kind of this many times it's the same ideas and same regulations, but there might be an extra one here, a different one there, but generally kind of clear, fair, not misleading are the principles that we find, at least in the places in the US, EU, UK, etc. So that side is quite easily scalable, especially with the kind of methods that we've got in the back end. Then when it goes to cross kind of vertical, it is also much easier for us because we've done it for one regulated market already. And usually we found that the systems are quite similar in the sense that you've got general marketing guidelines, you've got platform specific guidelines, but then you've got the industry specific guidelines. And those relationships are very similar. If you look at, for example, the gambling space, you've got the Gambling Commission, British Council of Gambling, the organizations, and then you've got the sort of general one. So that kind of interplay works in a similar way, and we can kind of train on those models. We've got the kind of systems in place where we can now leverage that data well. We know how to access the experts, and we know how to train using that. In terms of change of regulations, what we actually do is, number one, obviously working with companies is always one thing. We build scrapers, so we're constantly in the loop with any changes that are made. We speak directly with the regulators, so we speak directly with the FCA, we speak directly with the ASA, and all the kind of regulators that we start to work with, we have a direct line there. For example, we're part of the FCA Digital Sandbox as well, which is an initiative. And the last part is that we have an advisory board. So we have heads of compliance from different organizations, which are constantly in the loop. So we kind of have a three-pronged approach to make sure that we're always one step ahead in terms of the regulations.
Okay. And then I guess given your client base, credibility is going to be kind of a huge thing. So what kind of quantitative metrics are you using to measure the accuracy of what you're picking up? And are you going to need a human in the loop initially to kind of make sure like there's good accuracy?
Yeah. So in terms of kind of that testing framework, we kind of have something that we have that built in place. So what we do is we compare with their compliance teams in terms of the consistency that they're getting. So we'll build a kind of system. So let's say, for example, Plum is one of our clients. We've built a testing framework where we've got their ads, what they said. There's then different inconsistencies. We find a consistent answer within that, and we try and equal or match and improve on that accuracy score, which for them is, well, I won't say that here. I don't know how happy they would be with that. And in terms of, so the second question was just to feedback on that.
Will you need a human in the loop initially?
Okay, sorry, yeah. So yes, so what we really push ourselves, especially in the beginning, as a co-pilot. Essentially, what that means is that we still allow or actually open up to that human overview. So the idea is that to begin with, a lot of this is a sociological problem, right? It's the sense that it's not just about the accuracy, but it's about the trust in the tool, and we can't control the whole population's trust in an AI tool. So what we try to do is to make sure that there's always a human in the loop. It could just be a final approval, or it could be retrospective spot checks. But we have those systems built in place as part of our workflow. However, with time, and this is the push we're getting from our clients as well, is to be able to automate that as much as possible. So at the moment, it might be that we're automating 80% of that process, 95%, 99%, 100%. But a lot of that is just a sociological thing that comes with a bit of time and trust, which is, I think it's fair to say, probably bigger than just AdClear.
Yeah, exactly. And so what do you think is your key technical moat? Like what's unique about tech and why is it so hard to build?
So there's a few different things. Number one is actually truly being able to interpret guidelines based on expert analysis, which comes from our board of advisors, data, which comes from both the data that we're able to access, but data that we get from our clients. And actually being able to provide an evaluation based off of what are really opaque and gray and hard to really break down regulations. At the moment, all that really exists are kind of risk warning flaggers. So, this could be misleading, this could be this could be that. But really what we've built using this kind of data and interpretations and different systems is that we can give you specific evaluations to tell you, you know, there's 3 things that you need to change. You need to add this risk warning. You need to change this image so that the graph is showing up and down. And I don't know, you need to change this word here because it comes with a certain association, for example. And that is really kind of the specific thing that isn't there on the market at the moment. Because, you know, again, LLMs exist. You could throw in an FCA guideline and put in an image and say, does this work? And it will probably give you 15 different potential answers, but nothing really tied down. And I think that's what we really push on. And that's our kind of technological push, is how can we take experts from different places, data, which comes from different companies, which have different risk tolerances, with the companies that we work with, and find the most consistent and specific changes so that the marketing team can know exactly within seconds, I need to change 2 things and then I'm done, rather than I've got 20 risk warnings and now I need to figure out which one of them are the most important ones that I then need to implement.
Okay, makes sense. So I think I read in your deck that you've got 2 paying customers so far. So it'd be great to just get more color around the feedback that you've had so far, the learnings, and how you kind of implemented that into the product.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so Plum was our first paying customer, and they're really our kind of they're our strong sort of design partners. We work a lot with them, and it's been super useful. I think for them, the feedback and the real margins for us to evaluate were how much are they using us, how accurate is it, and how happy are they with us. They were initially using Jira for this process. We were expecting that within 3 months they would move from Jira onto AdClear. Within 1 month, they moved their whole team from the Jira process to the AdClear process. So just within a month, I think that kind of says for itself the confidence that they've been having in the tool and the workflow. They've got currently 27 or 28 members on AdClear using us. In terms of the amount of campaigns they've submitted, they were submitting and checking around 20 to 30 campaigns a month. On their old system, they've already done over 70 campaigns on our system. So that shows the ease of use, that they're willing to kind of keep checking everything. Everything is now auditable on that system, which has been great with compliance. We have weekly calls with them. So we've been kind of on the AI side doing a lot of tweaks. We're building a second version, which has been informed not just by them, but by other pieces of feedback. But we've also seen great data points. Like, for example, initially it was taking on average 16.7 days for a campaign to go from initiation to final approval. And this was starting to be replicated right at the start of AdClear. But at the moment, we're actually seeing that come down to within a day, actually within a few hours, from them uploading an ad to a human actually approving it. So that's like I don't know what the percentage is. I should have probably prepared those numbers before this call, but a huge decrease in the amount of time from 16, 17 days to within sometimes less than an hour. So those data points are all pointing in the right sort of direction. So it's going really well. And with AudioStack, it's a slightly different relationship because they have an API piece, and they're not a financial services company, so it's a bit more general. But we've been working on them implementing the API into their kind of tool as well. So that's been working really well.
Okay, and then one last thing is you mentioned Plum was using Jira. It'd be great to get an understanding of how many of the kind of people that clients have been speaking to are already using a different product or competitor, or the ones that are just purely using old school kind of content compliance workflows.
So in terms of obviously general kind of figures and numbers, it's hard for us to know exactly how much of them are using which one, because usually when we start speaking, I mean, from our conversations, only the sort of really large players are using a kind of more dedicated system to this. So we know, for example, let's say the likes of Nationwide and so on have bigger systems sort of that are competitor. We sort of refer to them as more legacy players in that sense. In terms of the kind of mid-market sort of direct to consumer, fast growing kind of Plum, free trade, that kind of space, they're usually still in the stage of using something like, beginning to automate this with the likes of a Jira or something, which is a bit more of a workflow tool, but they're still not at the stage of kind of a dedicated space yet, because those legacy players don't really provide the value for a fast moving organization to pay a huge amount of money to just have an extra system that doesn't really help them much. So we kind of fit in to ensure that, well, you've got a workflow in place, but we're actually here to really speed it up versus just add another platform for you.
Okay, great. Well, that's all the questions I had. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you so much. No, it was a pleasure.
Well,